You're watching Arise Exchange. Welcome back. I'm Abby Omolawi. The African Energy Chamber is mainstreaming women in the continent's new direction for energy independence, development, and sustainability. A panel of discussants on women energy was put together at the 2023 African Energy Week conference held this week in South Africa. Let's take a listen to the views advanced by some of the panelists.
I think on one way or the other, we are all talking about the same thing here. It's just on how to go around it and how to get the point out of what we are discussing. Yes, the challenges that are facing private sectors are different in virus of in any country. Each country have challenges that they are facing. So in Africa in general, we can say that lack of or insecurity is a major challenge that we face in different parts of the continent. We can also see that there is also financial impacts there where we lack funds and governments are not in to support the private sectors that much. And I think if government have to put a lot of effort in supporting the private sectors, it will help us in what we are discussing today, because this private sectors is where most of our youth or women will be able to get job, will be where the energy sector, as we are discussing here, can also be implemented well. But if there is no finances, if there is no security, you will find that even investors who are willing to invest in the continent, they will not put a lot of effort in because they will fear about their resources maybe. And in many cases also you find that when there is, in recent days when there are war, you will find that most people who are not able to, or who cannot afford what the other have, they get chances of destroying everything that has been built. So it scares many people for them to invest. So I think for us to put a lot of efforts in private sectors, we really need to ensure security. And Africans really need to work hard on this.
In addition to the traditional oil and gas production, oil production, we need innovative approaches like the mini-grids, microgrids, and renewables. That's what we call the energy mix. You need all forms of energy source.
Thinking about how to really have a dynamic energy mix in Africa, a lot of the infrastructure that's needed for the things that you were talking about isn't necessarily in all the communities where you optimize and deploy that. And I think what happens when you're not in the global south, so those of us who sit in the global north, we talk a lot about, we anticipate what we think the problems are for a different region, which is completely unfair, and it's usually wrong, okay? And so it first comes from looking at local community levels, because people, the single greatest challenge in the energy transition is people. And if we're not actually going in and engaging at the community level, we won't have the right skills, we won't necessarily have the right talent to continue to run infrastructure that's installed, et cetera. And so you've really got to start at the most collaborative level is between a developer and the community that they sit in. So Baker Hughes, we sell a lot of technology, we provide services, but we live in the communities that we serve. And so it's that coming together that's really going to make that happen. And the second part is getting at that tech transfer and skills. One of my single greatest concerns for the transition to a lower carbon state is that in so many parts of the world where we want to go to a different kind of power mix, we don't yet have enough people to do it, okay? And many people don't want to. Okay, and so like if you think about installing a solar panel, if you guys have seen that done on a person's house, it's really labor intensive. There's no way I want to do that, all right? Okay, but what I like to dig a hole in the desert, and as being a geologist, I've done that and I enjoy that. So you pick and choose. We can't assume that just because jobs happen and they're available that people want them. And so these are some of those challenges in looking at the community level to make sure it's a good fit, because not everybody's going to want every kind of technology.
Africa is peculiar, and it is peculiar for so many reasons, and I think that context is very useful in how we frame the way we address the issues, the transition issues and how we deal with integrating renewables as the main source of energy and decarbonizing. And the reality is that Africa is the least contributor to climate change, to the emissions that have led to climate change. But we all live in the same world, and therefore, if there are climate changes, Africa is going to be one of the most vulnerable regions for so many reasons. It's poverty, it's lack of infrastructure, the high population density. So for so many factors, even though Africa is the least contributor, it is going to be one of the most impacted if there's a negative, there's adverse climate change. And so with that in mind, there's also the fact that Africa is faced with huge infrastructure deficits, very high energy poverty levels, and therefore, while there's this conundrum, you have to develop at an accelerated rate, but at the same time, you need energy to do that, but you have to provide that energy on a sustainable basis, right? So there's sort of that tension and how to create that balance. So I think that in framing any energy policies around whether it's microgrids, mini grids, any renewables strategy program, three things are very key. Ensuring that it's sustainable, meaning that you're decarbonizing, ensuring that it's affordable, meaning that the people of the continent can afford to pay for it, and also ensuring that the security so it's reliable and it's consistent. So in framing any renewables program or off-grid or meaning these are three key things that policymakers need to be very sensitive to because of the peculiarities of the African situation, and especially given that the kind of baseload power you need to sort of catapult or leapfrog African economies, into developed economies, it's not really going to be gotten from renewables. It may seem controversial, but that's my view. And therefore, you have to have this compromise where you have an integrated approach, where you're still transiting out of fossil fuel, supplies, but you're also incrementally on the sidelines also have a very robust mini-grid, microgrid program that helps to integrate underserved or unserved areas to having electricity access.
It's very important that there is an enabling environment and the vision of yourself. If any of the young colleagues ask me, because mentors at the end of the day are going to be helping and supporting you, but you will be making the decisions at the end of the day. So it's very important to have a vision of yourself, and maybe that will just take me to, because I was really inspired when Shirley spoke about the vision for Africa. She took me one step ahead of what we're doing here, because she said, and I think from all the conversation, it is with no question the priority for Africa right now, the different parts of the continent, is the energy access, the utility, the power, to cook, to clean, to cool, to heat. But at the end of the day, what can you do in the next generation? I think there is a whole lot of opportunity for a material transition where you can take the carbon molecules and basically convert them to the materials of the future that are needed in the infrastructure to build, which is a very big question for Africa when it wants to industrialize. So I think, taking it one step ahead is always going to be very critical, especially for the young nations in Africa.
For those of us that have experience, it's important, even from this workshop or conference, that you take at least one young person under your wing that you want to mentor. Mentoring is a two-way street. They might not look for you, please look for them, because Africa needs for our youth to be ready to take over the next generation.
Most of the women are kept in villages, and all of us in this room, we all have a village to go. And when we reach to those villages, what do we see there? They are very far from us here in this room. Let's say it's South Sudan, where I came from. I can say it, 80%, not only women alone, 80% of the whole population is facing that energy problem and electricity and all this. And how do we help women to come up or to come out of that? Where I came from, women live or they have been trained as nobody. when you went to a home and asked if there is anyone there, the woman will come out and say, nobody at home, only women. So how do we help our women to come out of that so that they can know that they are part of this body? We are not nobody, we are part of this body. And this needs all of us women of today who are able to make sure that all this training reach to those villages in the continent and uplift our women to know that they are somebody, they are not nobody.
You cannot do much if you do not incubate education. So I quite like Ayanda's comment around education. And you need to make sure that we support them right from primary school through to high school and university with the right skills. And if we talk about energy, we are quite deficient in STEM, the science and technology subjects, and women tend to shy, or young girls tend to shy away from that. We need to make sure that we encourage them a lot more and give them a platform to believe that they can achieve the best they can be.